Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar today. We're just going to wait a couple seconds while everybody gets registered and added to the room. The room seems to be increasing, so people are arriving as we speak. Good morning, Pavel. First chat of the day. All right, this is fantastic. Thanks for all the good mornings, everybody. This is something that I've been thinking about and for a while on a way to get everybody together and talk about code, especially during this COVID-19 issue that we have. It's also, I think, a great opportunity for people that are in the north, people in rural areas, people in small municipalities to have a good chat and talk about code. And that's what we're going to do today, and especially with the architects and engineers out there. And this is a great way for us to sort of get together on some code topics and be able to sort of understand it together, because a good discussion is always great. I know one of the things that we're going to be doing today is we're going to be giving our opinions. And unfortunately, you ask 5 people one thing about code, and sometimes you get 5 different answers. And you know what? That's okay. And as I go through and do this webinar today, one of my thoughts is really just to sort of give you my opinion and the opinion, of course, of Mandy, who's with me today, and it gets the discussion going. I always keep in mind that there are a lot of authorities having jurisdiction in the province of Ontario, and sometimes there's slight differences in opinions and, of course, intent. But really, the idea today is to bring those up. And you know, if you do have a slightly different opinion than us, then when we're talking about these particular topics, please bring them up, put them in the chat. We're going to have a record of the chat. Yes, I did, Todd. I did clean my mic today. But no, it's a great opportunity for us to have a discussion. And if you do have a difference of opinion, please send it through on the chat. We get the chat and we can record it. And then later on, we can take a look at it and go, you know what, let's take a look at that and see that differing opinion. So please don't take offense when we're trying to go through these code items. I keep saying to myself, listen, if we all be quiet and we don't say anything, then nobody does anything. It doesn't give us anything. It doesn't push us forward, where at least if we have some good discussions on these topics, then it really does try to bring us to a more consistent approach when we talk about it. Plus, being code practitioners, we all love talking about code, right? So this is a great opportunity for us. So what do we have here? We got quite a few people that have made it on. We have almost 200 people that have signed up for this webinar this morning. So this is fantastic. So we're going to have a great amount of discussion today. One of the things that keep in mind is that we're going to send you the recording after this webinar. So this will allow you to look at it at your own time. Maybe if you remember something that I said and said, what the heck did he say again? And was he crazy? Take a look at it. Find it on the video. It can remind you, so that recording. Plus, for the people that were going to come today but weren't able to come, sure, take a look at it. It's going to be sent to you. So if you registered and you weren't able to make it, you can still take a look at the webinar video after the fact. So that's fantastic. It also has an option that while you're watching the video, if it's got a little question box, so you can essentially just say a type of question while the video is going on. That's going to be emailed right to me, and then I could take a look at it and give you my thoughts. So that's a good option too. The other thing that we're going to be doing is a lot of Q&A during the webinar. So make sure that while you're doing the webinar, send in the questions right away. Don't save them. We're going to try to do Q&A during the entire webinar, and then at the end, we'll do a lot more. You'll notice that in your chat box, there's a toggle and there's an option for when you're chatting or when you're asking a question. So if it's a question, make sure you toggle that. That helps Mandy because she's going to be going through the Q&A today, and that'll help her understand where to categorize it so she can get your question, and then she can address it, and then her and I can work together in helping answer the questions to the best of our ability. And last but not least, at the end, please fill out the survey. It's going to give us an idea of what you think of the webinar, how it went, things that could be better, things that were great. It'll also have an option to say, what are some future topics that that we should all discuss on these webinars? So please put those in the survey, and that'll help us understand what you're looking for, and we can incorporate it into our future webinars so we can have some good discussions. So this is fantastic. This is good because I think, you know what, as I said in my sort of preview email is that, or posting for this webinar, my favorite time of the day was always the morning. My experience, of course, is the City of Guelph, and there's a lot of people from City of Guelph here today. We would get together in the Inspector Corral in the morning, and we'd talk about what happened yesterday. And I think we all do that, especially if you're at any type of company. You'll talk about, hey, what happened yesterday? This code item happened. What did you do? What do you typically do with that? And how do you resolve that issue? And what's your thoughts? And that's really what I want this to be about, is this Let's Talk About series. Is every other Wednesday morning, you log on, and let's have an hour, maybe hour and a half discussion, and sort of get our creative code juices going so that we understand the items, and we come out the other side with a bit better understanding of the intricacies of the building code. So that's the thought. So today's cast, of course. Today, of course, is me. My name is Gerald Moore, and I'm a certified building code official and with the Ontario Building Officials Association. I'm also a CET with OSET, and I've been doing building inspections and code work for about almost 25 years. And I started off at a small municipality and worked my way to a mid-sized municipality. I've done inspections, plan review, and CBO work. I've also worked in the private sector for a little bit. So I always have enjoyed that because it gave me a bit of a perspective of both sides of the picture. So I understand code compliance, but I also understand the sort of complexities of working in a project on the private sector side, making things particularly work. So that's my thoughts. I've also done a lot of commercial inspections, so I've gone through a few of these code issues. I don't want to say I'm an expert, but I've gone through a few of these things before, and I'd love to share my thoughts on it. Today with me also I have Mandy Harris, who works with me at RSM. She is the Director of Plans Examinations. So want to say hi, Mandy?
Good morning.
So Mandy helps and Beth is in charge of all the plan review that we do at RSM Building Consultants. At RSM here, we are a support service for municipalities who need help with plans examination and inspections. But essentially, Mandy is the one that coordinates all the plan review, helps municipalities with complex plans, or if you get a big onset of a whole bunch of plans and you need a little bit of help for a while, we're there for that. So I'm glad to have Mandy here. She has almost about 15 years experience. She's done a ton of plan review, and she's also done inspections, and she's here to also give us her thoughts. I remember when we were first talking about our first webinar technical discussion, I had a few ideas, and that day Mandy was just off the phone with someone, and they were having a discussion on exiting through lobbies, and she thought, man, I just wish we could have a more consistent approach and some discussion on exit through lobbies, and wouldn't that be a great start? So I said, well, let's go with it. So we've spent the last 2 weeks working on this webinar. It would be nice if it was just me coming on and just talking about it, but none of us are that good. So we've spent a lot of time researching the topic. For someone who doesn't understand the code or hasn't really seen it, you're like, how could you spend that amount of time on a single code article or a couple? But as we know, in the code consulting or in the code practitioner, there's a lot to it. So during the webinar, Mandy is going to be doing all the Q&A. So she is literally going to be going through all your chats, and hopefully you're putting it as questions if it's a question, so it'll be easier for her to categorize it. And then through that time, she's going to be sort of stopping me as I go through, and she's going to start talking about the question, and then we can try to give you the best answer that we can. Always remember that on the survey, you can ask other questions, or even on the replay, you can send me some questions too. If there's something you remember, maybe Mandy and I can take a look and give us your thoughts. So are we still having people that are looking at trying to register? I see here, but
Yes.
I imagine they can.
The question came up, if there's people that want to register, are they still able to do so? And yes, I believe they are. So if someone wants to pop in now, they can certainly do that.
That's great. Fantastic. Okay. Without further ado, well, I guess let's talk about our webinars. So what we're going to be doing for the first 4 Wednesdays, and this is every other Wednesdays, we're going to be providing free webinars. The idea is we want to help everybody, of course, through this COVID-19 pandemic. And the other thing is we really want you to see what this is all about. We're hoping that you get a subscription. Let's be honest. It would be great if I could do this for free forever, but unfortunately, we all can't. We need to eat, and so our thought is that we'd love to provide these for you on a subscription service as we move forward. So instead of taking an entire week off to go to a course, all you have to do is dedicate a Wednesday morning from 9 till maybe 9:30 or 10:30 at the most, and it would be throughout the year. But to start off, we're going to be doing 4 of these webinars for free. Tune in. There'll be registrations for them, and you can sign in. Right now, we're going to, of course, do exit through lobbies. The next one is going to be cannabis facilities. We're going to be talking a little bit about some OBC compliance items that we've seen. Mandy and I have dealt with quite a few cannabis facilities throughout the province, and we're going to share our thoughts and our conclusions as we went through those plan reviews, and of course on the inspection side. That will be on April 29th. On May 13th, we're going to do a part 1011 story, the story of part 1011. It really, I think the concept of part 11 and part 10, just in a generic sense, and understanding how to work your way through that part of the code is definitely something we can dedicate an hour to. It's not going to get in depth, but it's really going to help people that maybe said, hey, I always thought about it that way. It'll give you a bit of confidence. Or if it's something a little different, then it definitely gives you some food for thought. And then on May 27th, one of my favorite topics is mezzanines. I'm not sure how deep we're going to be able to get into it, whether it'll have to be a 2-parter, but the thought of mezzanines considered a story, vertical fire separations, egress, and exits. So that's the idea of those 4 particular webinars. They're all going to be free. Same concept as here. You can register at any time. And then the day of course, you'll be sent links so that you can move on and attend the webinars. Yeah, part 1011 is going to be good. And the question is, what's the subscription? So what we've looked at is we've kind of looked at what our pricing model is for, because we do a lot of in-class particular sessions too. So what we want to do is, of course, it's different. Webinars are different. There isn't as much back and forth. There's different ways to do it. But the idea, of course, is we're going to have these webinar memberships. That's going to be $4.95. That's going to be from June till December of 2020. And once you subscribe, really, you'll be sent the links and you'll be able to acknowledge and go in through those webinars. We've already been in touch with the Ontario Building Officials Association. They are going to provide these webinars, and they will be used as CPDP points. I've also been in contact with OSET, and I'm still working on the Architects Association, but these will be approved for CPDP points. So most of them are going to be an hour, so 1 point. If we do stretch it to an hour and a half, well, now I've got a mind block at what the OBOA told me, but I can't remember if you have to round up or round down. It's probably round down, but I will check into that for you. But it's definitely something that you're allowed to use for your CPDP points. Oh, I've been told it's a round up. Isn't that nice? So if we go past an hour and a half today, we get 2 points. So that's good news. So I can't see it on my side, and please bear with me. This is my first time working here, but I do see that if you look on the right side of your screen, you'll notice that we have the offer here, which has a button that'll take you right to the subscription service, and you could sign up today. This would just get you queued up moving forward from June till December. Of course, the options are still free when you for these first 4 webinars. But if you push the button on the right side, you'll be able to subscribe, get up on the list, and then we can have some more fun as we go through 2020, as we start getting back to at least some type of normality, if that's at least different than what we are in our lockdown mode. All right. Now, I know there's a bit of a lag. You might not notice the lag, but there is a little bit of a lag from when I change slides and I talk and when you actually hear it. So sometimes you might notice that there is a little bit of a lag before we put up some of the offers. Now, I got a question here. What is it? I just happened to see it, Mandy, here from Chris Peck. Is the person or per municipality? Right now it's per person, Chris, but definitely if you have a few people from a municipality, reach out and we can work out something for you. It is per person, the actual the subscription fee, just like you would go on a course. So if you're going to be going on an OBOA course or any type of course, it's per person. But if you do have a certain amount of people, we can look at some bulk rates. The idea, of course, we really want to get the more people to have the more discussion. All right, so right now, just for us to kind of get an idea of what's your role as a building code practitioner, on the right-hand side, you'll notice that there is a little bit of a poll. And if everybody could start sort of entering and answering the questions, it gives us an idea of who you are, what you do. So when we're having these discussions, we can ensure that we don't miss anybody. Now, it looks like we got the numbers coming in on the particular poll. We'll let you see the poll numbers too to get an idea of who's around today. But it looks like we got about, the building inspectors are beating out the plans examiners, but the numbers are going back and forth real quick. But it looks like we got about 55, 56, so 57% of inspectors, 28% plans examiners. We've got some architectural technologists and architects and engineers. We have some people that fit into their own category. So I'll have to find out exactly what that category is, and that'll be good so I can make sure that your name is on the list here so you don't feel left out. Okay, fantastic. Well, that's great. I don't know if we can publish that. We're trying to still figure out the tools on how to use this particular program, but it looks like definitely we have 57% inspectors and 25% plans examiners, and then the rest architects, engineers, and people that fit in their own category. Well, exit through lobbies. Let's give me an idea of what do you know about exit through lobbies? So we have a second poll here to give us an idea of what you're thinking. And the idea with this poll is to tell us how much you know about it. So, maybe there's some people out there that could teach Mandy and I a little bit about exit through lobbies, and that's fantastic. Please provide your understanding of that. Maybe, again, like I said, in your survey, you could give us some pointers and some tips and some thoughts on some things that you had looked at it a little bit differently, because, of course, discussion is always a good thing. Well, it looks like as the answers are going through, it seems like, Mandy, what is the biggest one we've got here?
I know a little bit, but I struggle understanding it. So next one would be, I know it quite well, and I would like to compare notes. That seems to be the two biggest categories.
Okay, great. Well, at least we only have a few people that haven't heard of it at all. There's a couple people that said, what the heck is exiting through a lobby? Well, that's good. You're here to figure this out. And so that's good news. One of the things I would think, and maybe I should have put this in hindsight on our literature, but if you do have a building code available, it's always good to have that beside you during this webinar, because, we like to discuss code and we need to understand the language and we need to look back at it. So that's what today's about, is exit through lobbies. So we're really going to be focusing only on that portion of the building code, and so that we can all get a better understanding of it. So today's agenda, what I want to do is, as I go through this, is basically talk about means of egress and exits, And then I want to talk about exit through lobbies, of course, how it deals with means of egress. Because, of course, if you don't know about means of egress and exits, then that's one of the things that how would you understand exit through lobbies? I want to go through the floor height, travel distance, adjacent occupancies provisions, interconnected floor spaces, how that's dealt with. And then, of course, the big section that I want to discuss is lobbies conformance with exits, which is always something that I think gets that people struggle through. And then, of course, the differences between Part 3 of the building code, which is the large building section, and Part 9, which is, of course, the small building section. So one of the things, Mandy, maybe if you could bring up in the building code, right at the beginning of 3.4, everyone, I remember exits as 3.4 out the door. And at the very beginning, 3.4.1.4, if you could bring that up and maybe share the screen with everybody, talking about what is an exit, because I think that's an important concept to understand as we go through these provisions. If you don't understand what an exit is, then sometimes it makes it very difficult for you to understand the other provisions. And as we can see here on the screen, we've got the provisions related with 3.4.1.4, which tells us what an exit is. And so, you know, 3.4 out the door is kind of the concept, of course, with exits, is that you need to be in a very, usually it's outside, out the door. But of course, we know through the provisions related to the code on the screen, we've got other options. You know, an exterior stairway, an interior stairway, a horizontal exit, which is, of course, through a firewall. So there's a few options that allow us to use exits. So when we're talking about exits and egress, we want to talk about means of egress, which is the big picture. Then we want to talk about access to exits, and then the exit itself. And if we go back, Mandy, to the slide that I had there before, it kind of discusses what we've been talking about there, which is the provisions related to means of egress in a sort of a picture type view. And as you can see here, the 3.4 in this particular slide is this interior exit stair, and the access to exit is how to get to that. And so when we look at it organizationally through the code, 3.3 in the code deals with the access to exit, and 3.4 deals with the exit itself. Now, what are we getting for means of egress? Means of egress, of course, could be a public corridor, or it could be just an area through the floor plate. So I've got one question. I don't know. Do you see that one question?
Yeah, Gerald.
Here.
So someone's asking a question for clarification. Is a window part of an exit or an egress?
And taking that maybe that's likely for a house or something in a basement provision, I would say that a window is not an exit. A window can be an option for an exit as a sort of a compliance alternative through Part 11. So sometimes it's an exit if you're using it through Part 11 of the building code, but egress to me means getting through the building. So I'm egressing to the exit. It's so the actual window is typically not considered an exit.
Gerald, I'm just seeing someone here is saying they're only seeing part of the slide. Is that the case for everybody? If everybody could use the chat and just let us know, or if it's just Martin.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm noticing I can see the entire slide on my screen, but yeah, maybe it could be somebody else that's not quite. Yeah,
Martin, try holding control and your wheel on the mouse and see if it'll zoom out for you.
All right, so getting back to the slide here. So when we're dealing with on the right side of your slide, you'll see that typically a means of egress is an access to an exit to get you to the exit, like this interior exit stairs. And in this case, the interior exit stair is the exit. So when you're at the top of, say, a 50-story building, you walk in that door. Doesn't matter that it's 50 stories down. When you go into that interior exit, that is the exit. So in this case, on the right-hand side, we have access to exit, and then, of course, it has to go to a few things, but generally an open public thoroughfare. So when we exit through the lobbies, really what we're doing is we're putting that lobby in the middle. When we're going from the exit to the open public thoroughfare, we're shoving that lobby in between. And in this particular case, it's usually something that the architects or the designers want. When somebody walks into a nice building, they want to be able to go into the lobby, and why not have the exit stair enter into that lobby? So it's a good design feature that that architects and designers typically are looking for. But I think what gets missed is what's after that. So maybe the architect, of course, puts it on. They know all about it. But how does the mechanical engineer know that this is an exit through a lobby? Or maybe it's not an exit through a lobby. And so I find that's sort of the disconnect that I always see. And on our building code matrices, we always don't see something specific to that. So maybe that's a good tip for the architects, is to maybe put that on the matrix in the bottom of the notes or in your fire separation notes to say, hey, we have an exit through a lobby situation, so that the mechanical engineer can then deal, and the electrical engineer can look at these particular provisions that we're going to talk about today and not miss them. Yeah, that's a good point. It looks like Google Chrome is a little bit better for using Webinar Jam. I think it's a Google product, so if you're having any issues, if you were to close down, open up Google Chrome, it might help. So there's a few choppy things that lobby exit through a lobby. So if you choose to have a lobby in between the exit and the exterior, then of course the lobby floor can't be more than 4.5 meters above grade. I don't typically see this as an issue. Typically, I'm trying to, I was brainstorming of ideas of when this could come about, the issue would be, of course, is that maybe you have a walkout situation because it's the average grade, right? It's not the grade right where the exit comes out. So that might be something that may trigger this. Myself, I've never seen that specific issue. That's a good
question here, Gerald, is that 2-floor area exiting through the lobby? I'm not quite sure I understand.
It's this one here. So this particular one, I'm not sure. The actual slide really doesn't show exit through a lobby, but in this particular case, if we were to put a lobby here, get rid of this exit door here. Now there might be a bit of a delay as I talk about this and draw, but the other idea here would be is that we would have people exit into this lobby instead of exiting to the exterior. So our next provision is one that we see quite a bit. I know we're always looking for, I know when I first started the exit through lobby, 15 meters, that was sort of something you always check. So of course the path of egress through the lobby needs to be not more than 15 meters. So there is a particular travel distance maximum that has to be through that lobby. Questions that I see that come up, and travel distance in general. Is travel distance measured as a diagonal through the room? Is it measured against the walls? I think the idea is that we want to ensure that there is no obstruction. So a lot of building departments like to see the travel distances on the edge of walls because there's typically more of a situation that could, it's not less apt to have any furniture or something obstructing that. So that might be something that you'll have to look at yourself, but typically you want to make sure that that path of travel for somebody coming out doesn't have to run more than 15 meters before they get to outside. How are we doing with questions there, Mandy? Are we? I know we have a few questions that are pretty specific, which might be difficult to answer in this forum, but this one of these things we can get back to.
Yeah, no, there was just a few comments, I guess, rather than questions. A couple suggestions. You know, why don't people just label it on the floor plan as an exit for the lobby, just to maybe identify for other disciplines. Which, yes, agree would be helpful.
That's a great idea.
For sure.
Yeah.
Another comment came in about underground parking could be a situation where we see the 4.5 meter difference.
Ah, good point. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question, is it measured from the exit stairs to the exit door out the lobby? So the question being, where does that 15 meters start and stop?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, as we go to, there's one provision, which is always a debated provision of the fire separation between the lobby and the exit. We'll discuss that. But I think the intent, of course, is where the exit discharges and the path through that lobby. So if you've got a situation where the stairs open to the lobby, which can happen sometimes, can happen not, it really depends. Maybe we'll talk about that as we move to the other section.
Another question here, does the lobby equal a shared exit?
A shared exit. Well, I guess if we're talking about if it's a multiple suite situation, then yes. But if this is a one suite building, I would say no. It's we're all looking at floor plates and whether those floor plates and how they're all egressing, but I think it wouldn't be shared if it was only serving one suite.
We've got a few more questions here. Does 3442 sentence 2 assume that the exit from the floor area is from a floor area above or below the first story, or does it include lobby level floor area as well?
Okay, well, I think what I'm going to do is if maybe while I'm moving to the next section, if you could take a look at that code article, Mandy, and if it's relating to exiting through a lobby, then we can talk about that.
Okay, I think you might touch on it in a few later slides, so we might just leave that one. I'll leave that one queued on the question board. Make sure we address it.
Okay.
Okay.
Of course, when you're using the lobby to exit through, you can't have any direct access to the lobby to industrial occupancies. And I've seen a few solutions to this, a vestibule situation where if you're an industrial occupancy, you have to go through a vestibule and then into the lobby, which would create an indirect access. I've seen that used as an option at one point. Whether that actual vestibule needs to have a fire resistance rating equivalent to the lobby, that's something that there could be some differences of opinion on. But I think generally speaking, we don't want any direct access into that exit. I agree with that, Brian. It would be nice if exits were on the data matrix. I think we should add a new line to this new matrix, exiting through a lobby. And I'll tell you, there's nothing worse that when you go as an inspector into an exit lobby, any inspector, it's sort of a red flag area. You walk in and the first thing you say is, okay, have they addressed it? And a lot of times it gets missed. It really does.
Another comment here, just that someone typically takes the measurement along the walls. Just if there's a smoke-filled room, can be disorienting. So if you follow the wall, you'll find the door. So that's something that they consider to be the measurement for the maximum travel distance. So
I like that. That's a good point. You're right. If it was smoke-filled, you're going to follow the edge of the room. I like that. Moving on to access into the lobby itself, of course, once you decide that I'm going to have an exit lobby, then there can't be any direct access to residential. There are some exceptions, though. And of course, the two exceptions are if it's sprinklered, that's okay. Or if you provide a additional means of egress from the exit stair that does not lead through the lobby, then you are permitted to have that open access into the exit stair. So there are some occupancy issues with regards to what opens into this lobby. Now, when we're dealing with lobbies, of course, with interconnected floor spaces, so it's not just, of course, as we're, just to keep us on track, it's not just a lobby in an interconnected floor space. We have a lobby that we've chosen to have as an exit through a lobby, and it's also within an interconnected floor space. And of course, the building code doesn't like that. When we come out of our exits, it's kind of a sacred place. So when you leave that lobby, this interconnected floor space has some very specific provisions. Of course, the only way that you can have a interconnected floor space in this exit through a lobby situation is if you meet one of the exceptions in the building code related to exiting through a lobby, with regards to interconnected floor spaces. And interconnected floor spaces, of course, that are exempted is when you have a sprinkler situation where that space is sprinklered, not necessarily the building, but the space. It is accessible to the second story and the first, or the first story and the basement, but not both. If you have that specific interconnected floor space through those specific occupancies that you see on the slide, A3, B, C, or F1, then you are permitted to do that. So you got to keep in mind using this in an interconnected floor space. Hotels can't do it. Lobbies aren't, if you have an exit through a lobby situation in a hotel, is one of those things that is prohibited. Now, here's one of the ones that I think we seem to discuss quite a bit on our team all the time, and it's something that always gets missed. I know if you're on the architectural side of things, sometimes us code people make your designs. We really challenge you to come up with these designs. And of course, the building code wants compartmentalization, and the designers want openness and beautiful lobbies and beautiful areas. And I think this provision makes it pretty clear, especially in part 3, we'll talk about part 9 later, is that there needs to be a fire separation between the lobby and the interior exit stair. That's specifically required in the code. So we can't have that open stair exit opening into the lobby. There's still, yes, we can exit through the lobby, but we still have to have that compartment between the interior exit stair and the lobby itself. And here's where we struggle the most. And I think this is definitely true, I imagine, for the mechanical and electrical engineers in the room. I remember seeing Craig Waller on the list there. I wonder if you're here, sir. But it was good to see you on the list, a mechanical engineer, because, you know, I imagine this is one of the ones that gets popped on all the time. But when we treat these particular lobbies as exits, they have to be treated as exits, and the code makes it very specific. 3441 and 3444 in part 3, and then we'll talk about part 9, make it very specific that when you decide to exit through a lobby, then you must ensure that it is treated like an exit. There are exceptions, which we're going to go through, but generally that's the gist. And we all know that this exit is the sacred land. It's the sacred land of protection for people getting outside of buildings. And when you decide to exit through the lobby, you kind of throw those rules onto the lobby itself. So something that needs to definitely be reviewed when you're looking at it. When the architect decides to do this, maybe it's on the matrix. Mechanical and electrical engineers know, okay, all right, I now have to look at this differently. And of course, as a plans examiner, you're going to be looking at that right away in order to ensure that it's being treated as such. How are we doing for questions there, Mandy? Do we have any other specific ones?
We have a couple specific, but I think you're going to cover it. So I'm going to hold off. I've just tabbed them for now.
Great.
But yeah, I agree. This is kind of where the discussion has come up with you and I a number of times. It seems every permit that we get, I would say in the last year, this is the #1 item that we run into, that these lobbies are not being treated like exits.
So exactly, and I think this is a big discussion that we really wanted to have today was about this provision. And the first, of course, is that it refers to the fact that a fire separation needs to be provided between the lobby and the remainder of the floor area. So as you can see from the slide, we've got this particular, the walls that enclose the lobby are now separated from the rest of the floor area. So of course, you get that open lobby, but I know if you're an architect out there, you're saying, still not open enough for me. I need the lobby open to the building. Well, right now, if in this first particular situation, you can't do that, where you may have to do a convenience stair or some other type of element with your exit somewhere else. So maybe exit through a lobby isn't a solution for you. As we apply it to lobbies, though, there is one exception that indicates that the fire separation is not required if the building is sprinklered. Sorry, I have to re-say that again. You still need the fire separation, but no fire resistance rating. So this may allow you to have more of an open concept through the use of windows, but you still need the fire separation. But if it's sprinklered, you don't have to do the fire resistance rating. So it does give you a few options there. Integrity of exits, this is the one that we have tough times with. Because it's an exit, you just can't put any type of separations through it. It doesn't matter how well you fire stop it. And I know we have some fire stop technical people out there, and you probably know this too, but you could fire stop it fantastic. It could be beautiful. It could look fantastic. But you know what? I'm sorry, you still cannot penetrate an exit or an exit lobby. It's very specific on what type of penetrations. Why is it a big deal? It's a big deal because an exit is a big deal. And the building code flavor is to sort of reduce the amount of penetrations through exits and exit through lobbies so that we have less of a chance of fire getting into that compartment. So, of course, there are some exceptions. Sprinkler and standpipe connections are fine. We need an exit doorway because we got to get in there. That's okay. HVAC and ventilation openings for high building provisions of 326. That's it. It's not saying anything about any other type of openings for HVAC. Wired glass and glass block, and sprinkler protected glazed wall assemblies. And this all applies to lobbies. So this is the big problem that a lot of designs will see, is that the mechanical engineer gets working at this, and the electrical engineer, the architectural plans, and boy, they just start throwing their duct layouts and their banks of ducts, and they are going right through this exit lobby, just all over the place. Then when it comes in for permit review, then it's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do with all of these penetrations and exits going through this lobby? So I think that's definitely something that it'll save you a lot of design time on the mechanical engineer side, is to always sort of have that in mind. Is this an exit through lobby situation, so that you can prevent this going through the design process? And yeah, like I said, there's no exemptions. It's got to apply to lobbies too. How are we doing with questions there, Mandy? Any thoughts?
Yeah, we do have a question. Can a hold open device be used on an exit lobby?
I would say it's very similar to any exit. So there's nothing specific to lobbies for these hold opens. So if I remember correctly, if the building is less than 3 stories, there's allowances for hold opens for interior exit stair doors. So I can't see how it would be any different.
Sorry, I'm just fielding through all these messages here. Bear with me.
Yeah.
I've got a question here. I'll maybe address it now. I think we've kind of covered some of it. I have someone that wants to use an exit through a lobby scenario without an exit stair. They have a parking garage space on the same floor level and are trying to reset the travel distance at the door to the lobby and then take another 15 minutes. So this is where we come into the open floor spaces that everyone wants to design to.
Yeah, great question, because usually we're dealing with this through an interior exit stair. If you were doing through an interior corridor, an exit corridor, which maybe is what this is, or say you have a parking garage and you're considering the door into the lobby as an exit door, I think make sense because, again, when we were at the very beginning, we talked about what is an exit, and an exit door is an exit. So that's an interesting one here. I think exit corridor for sure. You get to add the extra 15. You get to have it go through that lobby. That's a good question. You know what? It's funny. I was answering it when I started saying, I thought, is that door that goes into the lobby a true exit door if it doesn't go outside? That's a good one. My gut feeling is it kind of works, but boy, you got me on the spot here. Horizontal exit, I would say yes, definitely. If you had a horizontal exit, that's an exit. So we're putting the lobby in between the exit and the open public thoroughfare. So I would say definitely that's fine.
Todd's got a point. Is parking garage in F1 that isn't permitted to exit through a lobby? So,
well, I've always thought of a parking garage as an F3. So I think, is F3 one of the prohibited? I think F3 is okay. Takes me too long to go back to that slide. But I'm pretty sure that exiting through a lobby only doesn't prohibit an F3. Or the interconnected floor space, I think, is what he's talking about, possibly. But Todd just said an F. So no, I think that there is nothing that prohibits. Well, there is a prohibition. Now I'm back on track between you can't have a direct connection between the industrial occupancy to the lobby. Not permitted at all, any type of industrial. The only option would be in order to possibly do an indirect through a vestibule, if that's something the authority having jurisdiction would accept. But I've seen those as a possible solution.
So just to follow up to the scenario that you were just talking about there, Gerald, that to make mention that the building is sprinklered, so it's a 0-hour rating for that separation, and it has a laundry room opening into it, and it has use as a mailroom within the lobby space. So it looks like they're trying to apply the lobby exemptions for the rooms opening onto, but almost it's acting more like a exit corridor.
Yeah, there's a lot of different scenarios that can sort of be discussed there, but let me sort of think about that as I move forward, and we'll come up with some of these specific situations at the end. Some penetrations that are permitted in this exit lobby and any exit is any penetration that only serves the exit. Now, I used to kind of stop there and say, okay, it served the exit, it's fine. But the code goes on to not only say it has to just serve the exit, but it's only permitted for these specific type of things. Electrical wires and cables, totally enclosed, non-combustible raceways, or non-combustible piping. We couldn't put a combustible pipe, fire stopped, through into this lobby that just serves that exit. It's got to be non-combustible. So we've got to ensure that we're reading all the provisions. Of course, one of the mistakes that a lot of people make when they're doing these is that they read a little bit and then they stop, and they're supposed to keep reading. There's more things, and sometimes they're hidden. So I get it. But prohibition of these penetrations is really the big issue there. And there's no exceptions for exiting through the lobby.
There's a question that's come up. Could you have penetrations on the non-lobby side, or would it still be the same restrictions since technically the same fire separation? So Holly, Gerald's going to speak to that in a few minutes, actually. We've got a few examples, so hang tight on that one.
So it's poll time. It's time for you to give us your answers. We promise we won't submit any of these results to the continuing education people, but I think this is a great time for a poll. We're going to talk about this particular situation that we've discussed. And in this particular situation, and we're going to bring up the, on the right-hand side, the poll, can a properly fire-stopped non-combustible conduit penetrate through a lobby? And as you can see here, they've put this right through the lobby. It doesn't serve the lobby itself. It goes right through it. Can this happen? So on your right-hand side, we've got our poll. Let's see how everybody does. I'm wondering if you can change your answer.
Yeah, it looks like you can.
Yeah, we're going up and down.
There's a little bit of wavering there.
So yeah, it looks like overwhelming, over 90%, 93% of the people say absolutely not. You cannot, even though it is fantastic, it looks beautiful. It even has one of those nice, beautiful fire stop labels on there, and it's just done sweet. It cannot happen in an exit or a lobby that's being used as an exit, because you are not allowed to penetrate through a lobby in this particular situation, because 3444 tells us, and there's an equivalent in Part 9 that says you cannot go through that particular fire separations because it's not permitted. Remember, lobby is going to be treated like an exit. It's that sacred, beautiful place. We don't want to put any holes in it.
The questions come up, Gerald. Does it mean that you cannot have a PVC sprinkler pipe in the lobby?
So, of course, the code does allow you to do sprinkler pipes. So sprinkler services are permitted to penetrate. So there are certain things that are allowed. And so, yes, that's a good question. So here's another one. Can a properly fire stop pipe or wire penetrate a fire separation and come back out the same side? We see this a lot, and sometimes this is difficult to see. I know as a building inspector on site, a lot of times you have to walk quite a ways to get to the other side of that exit fire separation. And is it just as important as the inside of that fire separation? So my thought is here we're going to see, Mandy, not just a sweep. We're going to be really, really close here. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah.
Well, looks like it's definitely not going to be as solid as the last particular poll. We're wavering between 70 and 30% here on this particular poll. So there is a lot of differences of opinion here. And so we're at about 70, 30%. 30% are saying, yes, this is okay. 70% of the people are saying, can't do that either. They're being a little bit, excited. They're getting excited about it because they're sort of got that priority in them that penetrations aren't permitted. Well, we'll bring up the answers here for you. But, and of course, this is my opinion, and this is that absolutely not. The fire separation, and this is where sometimes we could go on for another hour on when we're dealing with a fire separation. Is it a membrane or is it an assembly? And in most cases, it's an assembly. So it has a whole bunch of parts to it. It's got, drywall on one side, studs with insulation, drywall. It's not just the drywall, it's the whole assembly. So it doesn't matter if we penetrate the one side or the other side, it's still not permitted. And again, it's because we are treating this like a sacred place. Even though the fire stopping looks fantastic and we love fire stopping, we don't like it when it goes into our exits or our lobbies, unless it is those sprinkler pipes and things that are permitted specifically to go into that exit or that lobby. Good stuff. All right.
There's still a question here, Gerald, about clarity on penetrate to sprinkler the lobby, but not penetrate all the way through.
I see. I think if we go back to maybe because we've got, let's pull up the code. Let's read about it, Mandy. Let's go into the exit provisions with regards to 3442. Or actually, no, we'll be in integrity of exits. So 3444. Let's look at the sprinkler pipe provisions.
Okay, give me a second here.
Yes, I like Eric. Membrane penetrations are still penetrations. Yes, they are. Yes.
Oh, my screen too big. Sorry, stay bear with me. All right, here we are. 3444.
Yeah, so here it talks about a fire separation that separates an exit from the remainder of the building shall have no openings except for standpipe and sprinkler piping. So I would say that it is permitted to go in it and then back out. Why? I don't know. Maybe, I guess, to hide the pipe. But yeah, I would say, you know what? We're still, that would be okay because it's one of those pipes that is permitted. So this particular one, now it does say, you know, on some things are only that serve the exit. You can see sentence B talks about all those list of items that only serve the exit, but standpipe and sprinkler piping doesn't talk about only serving the exit. So you could have the sprinkler pipes go all the way over top, all the way through. I like this this discussion that John's brought up with regards to what's the definition of a lobby, because I know there's a lot of architects out there that will love that, where they're exiting through a room. What is that room? It's just what do they call it, right? And so I think if you're a smart, well, all of us architects are smart. Not saying it's smart, but I think to help everybody with the code compliance path, I think you should call it a lobby. It really brings it all together and shows the code compliance path, because I think that's really important. When as a designer, and you know, maybe I haven't done a lot of work on the design side, so I'm sure you have a lot of gripes about us building officials, but one of the things that does help us as building officials is if you sort of set your design up to follow the code compliant path, your approvals will be a lot faster, because we can kind of see what you're doing. You know, I know designers, they've been working on these plans for months, and building officials and plan reviewers get you know, up to 20 days on a lot of the permits, and it's tough to get their mindset into it. I know as a lot of plan reviewers, we have to sit and look at plans for a while just to get our head around the project.
Questions come up here, which I know we've had a number of discussions before as well, is can you have a concierge security desk located in the exit lobby? Also, how about furniture and other decor, or things like parking pay machines or a fire alarm annunciator panel? So we've had this debate before, Gerald, you and I, as to, you know,
yeah, of course,
stuff is in there.
I think trying to remember, I think we're going to be coming to that later on, but yes, you are permitted, and we'll talk about that when we get to that point. Now, one of the things that is always a question of is what happens when you're an inspector, you walk in and you see that they put this pipe all the way through. So let's do another poll. So we've already brought this penetration through, and oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I know there's a question on here. Can we just, you know, throw it inside the fire separation or put it in a fire rated bulkhead? So that's a good question. So let's get our polls up and let's see what people think. What's the solution here in order to fix this problem? So we can see here the numbers are coming in. Right now, just so everybody knows, we have 217 people. So we're definitely getting a lot of good input here from the group. This is fantastic.
There's been a lot of chat going on, Gerald. I don't know if you're able to watch it, but just speaking to this point here too. So I'm not ignoring everybody. I'm just, I knew this was coming up. So we'll have that conversation now.
Okay, well, you know what? It looks like, you know, we'll see how it all comes about, but 85% pretty much people say you need to provide a complete other fire separation underneath the pipe. There's a few that just say, no, it's got to be rerouted. And there's a few say there's no other options, get rid of it, all right? So there is quite a bit of options here. I think from the way I look at it, of course, you can simply reroute it. Yeah, that's an option, but that's an expensive one, you know, just to sort of bring things up. I was out on a project last week, and I walked into in one of these rooms, and I could see, let me make sure I can bring this up for you. is I was in a lobby, and of course it had a lot of penetrations that were already in there. So what do you do about it? So a lot of times the debate comes up on how are we going to do this. Some say, well, just hide it in the fire separation. Put a piece of drywall below there and you're fine. And I think the problem that we have is that, you know, we still have a penetration, and it's not about it necessarily being inside the exit or the lobby. It's how did it get in there, and you can't have it penetrate the exit or the lobby. And of course, the only way to do that is to put a lid on it, put another lid underneath the first lid. And shaft wall is really the best solution here, because it ensures that it's not within. It can't even be within, right? It had to get in there somehow. So how did it get into the fire separation? Because it can't penetrate. So we got to create a new fire separation that's fully intact. And of course, because we can't build this thing with tape joints and everything at the top, we have to use a product called shaft wall. Now, for a lot of us commercial inspectors or designers, shaft wall is used on shafts of large high rises where you can't mud and tape the backside of the wall. This thing can be built sort of and put into place where you don't need to get to the backside. And it has what we call CH channels that sort of protect the joints on the backside. And if we do that in a horizontal situation, we can create this lid that separates it. So really, that particular penetration and that service is not in the exit anymore, because we've kind of created a fire separation below that. And it looks like most people agree with that in the poll, essentially. One of the things that when you're dealing with shaft wall, yes, there's lots of fire ULC listings and stuff for the wall itself, but compliance with the ceiling situation is a BMEC from 1989. It's still in place, 8901-118, that talks about how this is to be done, and it gives us some maximum spans. So you may not be able to shaft wall the entire ceiling itself, but perhaps, like a few of you have noticed on the chat, you could bulkhead it, sort of create a bulkhead in the ceiling, creating a shaft wall side and a shaft wall bottom. So yeah, you know, definitely something that will give you a bit of a solution when you come in there after the fact.
Does that answer your question, Stacy? How do you deal with the detailing where the shaft wall meets the existing fire separation with the penetration?
Yeah, so I think this is a diagram that I pulled off that kind of shows how that detail works. But, you know, I think definitely the walls that support the shaft wall need to have a fire resistance rating. So that's definitely something that's in place.
I believe too, Gerald, I saw that somewhere in the BMEC approval. I might be incorrect on that, but I do recall something of that.
Okay. Typically, a 1 hour shaft wall has only one layer of finish on the inside, one layer on the inside. 2 hours are usually 2 layers. Good point, Kevin. Kevin's brought up the fact that there are some other manufacturers that do have horizontal shaft wall ULC listings. It's CGC that has the BMEC. Great comment. Thanks, Kevin. We'll add that to our repertoire. So there is a few questions going on. We're not quite done yet with the exits, but I think the exits are definitely the one that I think if anybody can come out of this webinar is that let's be careful. Let's make sure that these lobbies are treated as exits. So that definitely is something that we should make sure is correct. The thing to keep in mind is that if we have a situation where we have a lobby that is sprinklered and it doesn't need to have a fire resistance rating, it still needs to be a fire separation. So in that particular case, you wouldn't need to do the shaft wall, because really, what is a 0 hour fire separation? Well, I always think of the Japanese paper houses. They are a fantastic 0 hour fire separation is a paper wall. And in our particular situation, you wouldn't need to get to this extreme. So in sprinklered buildings, you could take a bit of a sigh of relief. But if you're in a non-sprinklered building with these lobbies and exits, you've got to be careful.
Someone's made a comment here that I think they saw a lobby definition in NFPA.
So I see. So they would use, if somebody decided to exit through a room with no label, they would have to meet that particular section. I've got a couple of comments that only a 2-hour horizontal shaft wall assemblies are permitted. So yeah, there's a lot of good, thanks for the great tips, and thanks for the comments, because you know what, we're all not perfect at this, and I think we can bring a certain level of information to you today, and we really, you know, if you've got any other options, like I said, or different, we've got a lot of people in the room today, so it's very difficult to sort of deal with every specific question you have. So don't get frustrated that maybe there's something, but please bring it up, and you know, at a later episode, we'll talk about the improvements that we've all come from all of the sort of discussion through this. So integrity of exits doesn't allow any rooms to open into an exit. But how does this apply to a lobby? Of course, it does allow options. You know, when we look at the first slide here, we have, it is allowed to have, if it was an exit, the list is pretty extensive, you can see here, of what cannot open into an exit. But as it's applied to lobbies, you are allowed to have those rooms with 2 exceptions, and that, of course, is the storage rooms and service rooms cannot directly open into this lobby. An option of an indirect vestibule might be an option. Someone brought this question up before. You know, we have these prohibitions on occupancies that can open into it, also what can be inside it. And there's a question about furniture and lobbies and the desk, but it does permit a room to be provided to supervise the building is permitted to be in that lobby. So it doesn't have to be separated from it. So, you know, I think with regards to the lobby desk and the chair and all the furniture that goes with that lobby supervision desk, that's fine. It's a tough discussion on furniture, because really, and you know, as a building official, a lot of times I really don't think about furniture as much because it's not permanent. Maybe it's more of a fire code or fire prevention issue, but certainly anything that's associated with a supervision desk is permitted in that lobby. Elevators. Elevators have some restrictions that are opening into this lobby. Of course, elevators are permitted to open into the lobby if they are designed to remain closed when not loading or unloading. And I think we all know most elevators, especially in the residential or office occupancies, meet these provisions. They always close. But perhaps if you're an industrial occupancy of some type, I don't know why you would have that, but maybe it's one of these guys that are this design that this lobby is a room in this industrial building. But you know, again, there's some prohibitions on opening into the lobby with industrial, so I don't know how that would work. So there might be a situation where this will come up, but hey, it does make it a restriction on the elevators. For mechanical engineers, of course, an exit shall not be used as a plenum for HVAC systems. So same thing for lobbies. This really comes up to be the difficulty with how are you going to ventilate these lobbies? We can't penetrate any of the fire separations with any type of HVAC openings. So a lot of times in interior exit stairs, that's why you'll see electrical sort of heat provided. Maybe there'll be a dedicated HVAC unit for that lobby in the exits. But you have to ensure that, of course, the penetrations are dealt with, and you can't use it as a plenum for HVAC. We don't want to have any circulation of smoke or anything that would, of course, make this lobby not a good path to get through. One of the last things I want to talk about, of course, is the differences between Part 3, because, you know, I will admit I do a little bit more Part 3 than 9, and I've been stuck many times where I'll send a deficiency letter out to an architect to say it'll be a Part 9 building, I'll have my Part 9 eyes on, or my Part 3 eyes on. I'll say, well, you can't do this. And they'll go, what do you mean? And they're right. There is some differences between Part 3 and Part 9. And the differences, of course, is that in Part 3, when we're talking about the adjacent occupancies, there are some restrictions, which we've talked about, but there is no restrictions in Part 9. They don't have any specific restrictions in Part 9 on what occupancies can open into that particular lobby. When we're dealing with interconnected floor spaces, there are specific restrictions, which we've talked about already, but there are none in Part 9 specifically. You still can't have it in a hotel, but the restrictions based on what that lobby and what type of interconnected floor space isn't specified. And the big one that I've been stung on before, and you know, there might be some debate on this particular provision, but in Part 3, it's very specific that there needs to be a separation between the lobby and the exit. And in a Part 9 building, it doesn't specifically tell us that you need to have a separation between the exit stair itself and the lobby. So there is a little bit of debate on that, whether I've put not specified. Maybe it's because I'm trying to not make a call on it so that I can get someone can sort of say, gotcha. But no, I think, you know, I'll be honest with you, I haven't enforce that provision based on the fact that I know it's specifically asked for in Part 3, but it's not asked for specifically in Part 9. But hey, maybe we'll get some chat in here that will help us go through. And just to keep everybody up to date is that when we're done this presentation, we're going to have all the chat. So we're going to be going through all that chat and questions to help us improve this webinar. So we really appreciate any of the information that you can give us.
There's a question here, Gerald. Would a garbage chute intake room be allowed to open onto an exit lobby, considering service room versus service space definition?
Yeah. You know what? I think, you know, I think they do fit in that category. Another way to look at it, would that not be an industrial occupancy? That would be my thought, is it's definitely an industrial occupancy. This can get into another discussion is with some desires. Sometimes people think when it's a major occupancy industrial, the whole building is industrial, or sorry, maybe assembly, but we have a janitor's closet that is industrial. We have, so maybe it's not a, you know, we're having a hard time with the association between a garbage chute and a service room, but I think it's pretty easy to say a garbage room is an industrial not permitted to open into the lobby. Now, that to me would then, I would think, prohibit it. So just a recap, maybe if you have some specific questions, we're going into overtime, Mandy. We're 10 minutes overtime. So, but this is great. So, you know, if you've got some questions you were thinking about, if you want to start adding them to the questions, what Mandy and I will do is we'll do our best to go through some of those questions. Some of them, you know, I try to get as good as I can, but some of them are pretty detailed, and to be able to answer them on the fly, I'll certainly do my best. But definitely, we want to answer as many questions as we've got. I don't know if you have a few of them queued up there, Mandy, but yeah. But before we do that, I'll give you some time sort of to do that. But I think before we sort of go through the Q&A, I just want to sort of remind everybody, because we might have some people that might drop off if they've got what they need. But make sure you get signed up. We'll be sending out the links for the next 3 webinars. Please sign up. Definitely sign up, and so that you can take part and we can all have some great discussions. Just to remember, cannabis facilities, the next one. Then we're going to be talking about Part 10-11 story. It's a great story. We love it. And then mezzanines on May 27th. And of course, if you go to our offer screen, which we'll have sort of on the side here, is that if you could get signed up for these 14 training sessions. Our thought, it's cheaper than a week away. Definitely, it's something that you can sign up for. We're going to remind you. Don't worry about it. We're going to send you emails. We're going to say, hey, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. So you have to take that away from your worries. We're going to definitely do that. If you have a large municipality with several members, please reach out. We'll look at some type of bulk rebates, but we're looking at getting as many people signed up as we can. The more people that are signed up, the more work that we can put into these webinars to bring to you to sort of keep us all on the same page and to try to fine tune our technical code skills. All right. So click the link on the side. That'll take you to where you're going to go. And keep in mind that, of course, this webinar will also be, you'll have an email link sent to you of a recording that will help you remember some of this stuff that we talked about today. And you can always ask questions after the fact. Give you also a little bit of an idea of what we do at RSM. I talked at the beginning is that we do a lot of plans, examination, inspections report. We do a lot of training workshops in our, we do a traveling roadshow. I know for some of you that are out there, I've been out to your facilities and chapter meetings to have some one-day workshop sessions, which has been fantastic. I've really enjoyed those in order to get out the word to everybody and to help everybody fine-tune. Really, I think it's going to be a lot easier for everybody the more we talk about it instead of being quiet about it. I know it's tough to give your opinions. Even me, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm going to be telling all these people my opinions and they're not going to agree with me. Hey, guess what? That's awesome, because there's no better way for us to get all this stuff out and understand. People are going to be like, oh, that's great. Or they're going to be like, I don't agree with that. This is good stuff. We really need to have these discussions and not be afraid. And we also do mentorship programs. We do a lot of work with young building officials. So please, if you ever in need of any help, email us and we can definitely help you out in that capacity. Questions? What do we got, Mandy? Do we have a few?
Yeah, we've got a few. There was a question. Shoot, it seems to be off my screen here, and I'm not sure why. There was a question earlier about something to do with 3442 exit through lobby, sentence 2. I'm not sure where that question went. It was specific to... I'm not sure the question. I'm not sure where the question went. It must have got deleted.
Too many questions in there. That's okay. Yeah, we'll keep going.
It was on the screen. It just went down through. There's another question here from Greg. When a building is sprinklered and the building has an interconnected floor space of the main floor and second floor, the lobby must still be separated, no rating from all the floors. So I think we did cover that as we were talking, but I'm not sure, Greg, if you're still on.
Very good point, Greg. Yes, because we're allowed to have it in the interconnected floor space, but that still then that interconnected floor space is considered the lobby. So that lobby would need to be separated out from the rest of the floor plates. Good point. Very good point. Yep, I like that.
One non-code question was, what was the subject for the May 13th webinar?
May 13th. Is that the next one? Well, let me look at my calendar. The 6th. Oh, it will be the part 10-11 story. It's going to be a good story.
Okay. To follow up on the concierge desk question, when reading 3442, sentence 2C2, I believe the code does require a fire separation between the room for supervision and the lobby, but allows the rating to be waived if the building is sprinklered, meaning an open concierge desk would not be permitted, question mark.
All right. Well, I don't know, Mandy, if you want to bring up that specific code article, we could take a look at that and have some discussion on it. Hey, keep in mind, everybody, that if you go past 10:30 today, you will get 2 continuing education points. So I know some people are dropping off and someone say, maybe I should wait or I got to go. Just wait, hold out. You've got, what do we got, Mandy? We got 14 minutes.
Yeah.
And you are, actually less than that. And you are going to get 2 points. Okay, so you brought this up here. A good question. So in this particular case, it talks about the fact that on E, that the lobby conforms to the requirements for exits, except that a fire separation, and let's find the one that talks about, here we are, the fire separation between the lobby and the room used for the sole purpose of control and supervision of the building need not to have a fire resistance rating. Interesting. Thank you, Chris. That one is a good point. You know what? That's one for me to do some research on, Chris. I'm glad that you pointed that out there. That is a good point.
But what, Gerald, could you consider that furniture though? If it's just a desk in the middle of the room, is it a room or is it a piece of furniture?
Yeah, I know. That's a good point. I think that's what Chris is getting at, is that, you know, just a desk in there with someone sitting, is that a room? But yet if it was some type of room that was for anything other, you know, a separate room, then it would need that, it wouldn't need the fire resistance rating, but you still need that separation. Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, that question is, same discussion has come up 3 times here.
Oh, Glenn, good. Thanks for the tip. He's given us an answer here for prohibiting the garbage chute opening into an exit. I don't know why you'd want a garbage chute opening into your exit, but hey, Greg's pulled it up. Glenn, good there. Thanks, Glenn. 36335D.
Colleen says, read point 3. It waives the fire resistance rating.
Read point 3. Yes. No, great tips, everybody. This is fantastic. I'm glad that we're getting some good discussion here.
So point 3 reads, the lobby conforms to the requirements for exits, except that the fire separation between the lobby and adjacent occupancies that are permitted to open onto the lobby need not have a fire resistance rating, provided the lobby and adjacent occupancies are sprinklered.
Okay. All right. I just noticed there's one question on here, Ashley, about your points. The verification we're working on, we are been certified to administer those points for you, but I believe if you could, anyone who is an OBOA member, the problem is that it's getting your OBOA number. So, you know, if you've got your OBOA number, you want to double check, we're going to do our best, but if you could send your point, your number to us, we'll try to get that entered for you. But of course, you can always do it yourself on the website and indicate that we'll make sure that we get it up on the website so that you can get yourself your points.
There's just a comment here, and I think it's in relation to this one. David saying 344C3444 sentence 6.
Okay.
So if we head
Integrity
down
of
there,
exits.
An exit shall be designed for no purpose other than for exiting, except that an exit is permitted also to be designed to serve as an access to floor area.
Okay, so that's a good point with regards to what you're using this lobby for, or, you know, when they're trying to stretch the rules to, you know, not label the room and say it's a lobby. Of course, it can't be used for anything other than egress. So there are some restrictions, and that's a good point. I think we had that before where we were talking about what kind of furniture and whatnot could be in there. I think if you get a design that's a little bit elaborative there, that's the provision you could use to restrict any work or any furniture in there.
Just to touch on the attendance, just so everybody knows that we are going to be sending an attendance list to the OBOA. So whether we have the number or not, we're going to work that out later, but we will be sending the attendance list regardless.
Yeah, and Chris, you know, Chris is fantastic. Mr. Peck here, he's a great webinar attendee. He's sending me all these great messages and great tips. He's even sent me his OBOA number in private, so we can look back at the chat and we can get it for him into the system. Thanks, Chris. That's good.
Justin's got a question here. In part 9, wouldn't 9985 sentence 4 not allow a lobby within an interconnected floor space unless this floor space meets 3282 sentence 6?
That might be a good
flip to that one.
Sure. So 9985, right? Exiting through a lobby, provisions related to part 9. And which sentence were we looking at there, Mandy?
9985 sentence 4. So except as provided in sentence 6, an exit is permitted to lead through a lobby referred to in sentence 1, provided the lobby is not located within an interconnected floor space other than as described in 3282 sentence 6.
So yeah, the way I had taken that one is that you are permitted, well, you know how the code works, it prohibits everything and then it allows you little little get out of jail free cards to use to have some. So you can have it as long as it meets 328.2.6, which of course is that lobby provision that's the same as Part 3. We can only have it in a lobby that is open to the second story, sorry, not the second. So if you're on the first story to the second or the first story to the basement, that is permitted as long as it meets the provisions of sprinklering and of course those occupancies. So thank you. That's good.
I think that's all the questions I have on the Q&A board here, Gerald.
I do see one from Scott Sheriffs, and it's a good question that comes up all the time, is that if we have services that go through a lobby that's treated like an exit, why can't we just put drywall below it and enclose it in the fire separation assembly itself? Why do we have to use shaft wall? And I guess my answer to that is that whether it's in the assembly, it's still penetrated the exit or penetrated the assembly. It's in the assembly itself. And the idea is like that one sort of slide I showed. You can't go into the exit and then back out. You can't go through it. So for you to sort of get in there and only be within the actual separation, in my opinion, that's not the intent. But you know what? There's a lot of debate on that, Scott, and that's a really good point. Okay, excellent. So let me get back, maybe Mandy, if we can go back to our webinar screen there. And yeah, if everybody wants to, this is great. We're getting lots of good. I've got one here from Greg. If a lobby has a convenience stair with the lobby leading to the second floor, does the stair need to be separated as well? If not, an exit to maintain the fire separation of the lobby? Well, I think if they have a convenience stair that goes up to the second floor, we've got an issue of the second floor is now open to the first floor. So we need to decide, where is this lobby? Is it on the first floor or the second floor? So I think if you have a situation where you have an opening in the second floor, like an opening interconnected floor space, that we still have to have the separation between the lobby and the remainder of the floor space. And we also need to still maintain the rules with regards to interconnected floor spaces, or of course separating the floors themselves if it's required. So I would say, it can be open up to maybe a certain section of the second story because that's part of the lobby and the interconnected. But when you get to the remainder, you've got to have a fire separation, whatever it need be, whether it's rated or not.
Another question here, Gerald. Can you use the exit lobby to meet above grade stair high-rise natural stair pressurization, given consideration to the required fire separation for the stair, also for smoke venting purposes, doors?
So I think, is that the one? Let me try to read that. Can you just repeat that question? Is that the one from Holly?
No, from Murray.
Murray. Oh, Murray. Okay. Yeah.
Can you use the exit lobby to meet above grade stair high-rise natural stair pressurization, given consideration to the required fire separation for the stair, also for smoke venting purposes?
That's a good question. I have to do some research on that one. That one on the top of my head. I think if we talk about the permitted openings into an exit or the lobby itself, it's only exits that or openings that are prohibited, that are allowed for 326. But yeah, that's something I'd have to do a little more detail. That's a good question, Marie. I might have to do some research on that one. I haven't thought of that one before. That's a good one.
Holly's got a question for HVAC services penetrating the lobby. It states only for 326 purposes. Would HVAC for heating the lobby be permitted to penetrate? Or is that why you see a lot of overhead independent units above doors entering into the lobby?
Yeah, that's why, Holly, is because when we look at the allowances for penetrations of a lobby or an exit, it says it doesn't have anything that permits HVAC openings other than for 326. So you need to create a situation where you're not penetrating a fire separation to get into the lobby. So that might be a dedicated HVAC unit with fire separations or shaft from wherever it is, or just something in that room, because there is no allowances for that.
Glenn's got a question. If an exit enclosure can only be penetrated by exit doors, can extra doors be added?
So I think when we talked about it allows, if we go to the code, it does allow to have exits to other parts of floor areas. It doesn't prohibit that. So I don't see any prohibitions on that because it's permitted.
Okay. Question here, how to deal with exiting non-compliant lobbies, existing non-compliant lobbies during Part 11 renovations?
So again, that's one that might be a good add-on. We're already an hour and a half here, so we'd almost be at a 2-hour webinar, but I'd have to look at the code provisions. Whenever you're doing a Part 11 renovation, don't forget to check the compliance alternative section of the code in Part 11, because it's definitely going to have, well, not definitely, sometimes it doesn't have any solutions, but if it's not permitted in the compliance alternatives and it is a new building system, then of course you've got to meet new code. So I don't think there's any relaxation on that. Fantastic. Well, this is great stuff. I really appreciate everybody coming out today. Of course, I have to have my disclaimer. I'm sorry, everybody. We try our best, of course, to have the best interpretations of what we know. But, you know, it's really our efforts that we put in. We put a lot of time into these webinars, so you know, so that we could try to get the right information out to everybody. I definitely appreciate the fact that we've got lots of great comments and great stuff that we have coming into us. We're going to be looking at that. And if you have any questions, please watch the replay and enter those questions. I'd be happy to answer them. And please consider signing up for our subscription for the end of the year. And hey, remember, we got 3 more of these things for free. So make sure you sign up and we can have some more fun with some other great topics. Well, Mandy, shall we call it quits and until our next webinar?
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming out. It's been a great time, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.